Your city may already be on a federal list you were never supposed to see. FEMA's 2024 Grid Resilience Assessment flagged 34 American cities as catastrophically underinsured against cascading infrastructure failure. 22 million Americans in those zones have zero federal contingency coverage if the grid goes down. Not reduced coverage, not delayed coverage, zero. When federal protection disappears, private insurance fills the gap, and it charges accordingly. The average homeowner's policy does not cover extended grid failure exceeding 72 hours. Your refrigerator, your medication, your sump pump, all uninsured after day 3. That is not a hypothetical. That is your current policy language. FEMA's internal threshold for catastrophic underinsurance is when federal recovery funding covers less than 40% of projected infrastructure restoration costs. Every city on that list is below that threshold right now. The suppression of this assessment was not bureaucratic delay, it was a classified designation. When findings get classified, local emergency managers cannot legally act on them. Your city's disaster preparedness budget is being written without access to the full threat picture. The result, infrastructure upgrade contracts don't get funded, backup power systems don't get installed, and emergency supply chains don't get pre-positioned. You pay for that gap at the grocery store the week after a grid event. In the 2021 Texas winter storm, food prices in affected counties spiked 34% within 4 days. Shelf restocking took an average of 11 days in areas with compromised cold chain logistics. That 11-day window is not an outlier. It is the new planning baseline for cascading grid failure. The 34 cities were flagged specifically for cascading failure risk, meaning one failure triggers the next. Water treatment systems run on electricity. Fuel distribution runs on electricity. Hospital backup generators run on fuel. When the grid fractures, those dependencies collapse in sequence, not simultaneously. FEMA's own modeling puts the cascading failure window at 96 hours before civilian supply systems reach critical stress. Your household has, on average, 48 hours of functional food and water storage. That gap, 48 hours of preparation against a 96-hour failure window, is the civilian exposure the assessment was measuring. The federal government quantified it, then it locked the number away. Now the financial layer. Infrastructure underinsurance does not stay in the disaster recovery budget, it migrates. When a city lacks federal backstop coverage, municipal bond risk ratings adjust. When municipal bond risk ratings adjust, city borrowing costs increase. When city borrowing costs increase, local budget pressure forces cuts or tax increases. Your property tax bill in a flagged city is carrying hidden infrastructure risk premium right now. The average flagged municipality is running a grid infrastructure deficit of $2.3 billion against projected maintenance needs through 2030. That deficit does not get absorbed by federal grants if the city has no coverage classification. It gets absorbed by rate increases, utility bills, deferred maintenance that becomes emergency repair. Emergency repair costs 4 to 7 times more than scheduled maintenance. You fund that multiplier every time your electric bill arrives. There is a workforce dimension that the coverage gap makes worse. Major employers run facility risk assessments before committing to long-term leases or expansions. A city flagged for cascading grid vulnerability scores lower on those assessments. Lower scores mean relocation decisions get made in boardrooms, not announced after the fact. The Amazon distribution center that doesn't open in your metro is a grid risk decision, not a tax incentive decision. That is 800 jobs that don't appear on your local employment report. Now, the insurance market signal. 3 of the top 5 commercial property insurers quietly adjusted their catastrophic infrastructure failure exclusion clauses in 2023 and 2024. The new language specifically carves out cascading municipal grid failure as an uncovered event category. They had access to risk modeling that the public did not. If the insurance industry moved before the public disclosure, they were working from the same data FEMA classified. That is not speculation. That is standard actuarial practice when proprietary risk data enters the market through regulatory channels. Your insurer already priced this risk. You just haven't been told what you're paying for. Here is your current position. If your city is among the 34 flagged, your household sits in a federal coverage void with no announced remediation timeline. Your utility costs will rise. Your insurance terms will tighten. Your local government will face fiscal pressure it cannot fully disclose. The assessment exists. The risk is quantified. The protection is not funded. What you do with that information in the next 90 days determines whether the next grid event is a disruption or a financial emergency. The window between knowing and acting is the only variable.